So we finally made it. We finally reached the source, the latest Ayreon album. I've been looking forward to this guy since the fall. I've actually gone back and reviewed all of the previous Ayreon albums in preparation for this guy. And I was blown away when I was actually able to get a pre-release copy of this album for review purposes. So it was a big honor for me to actually review this before the release date. So let's dive into this Liquid Eternity and find out what's going on in the source. The Source by Ayreon. So for anybody just joining us, Ayreon is an amazing project that's being helmed by Arjun Anthony Lucassen. He is kind of the mastermind orchestrating the whole thing, kind of like an Alan Parsons project where he writes, records, and really oversees and composes all of the music, but he hires out a lot of different artists to come in and help him out with the actual album itself. Each of the albums prior to this have been a concept album in some sense of the word, and each album, or at least most of the albums, have been a double concept album, telling a rich and full story with plot and characters. What we find here is the same thing, but this time he's done something a little bit different. This album is a prequel to the album 01011001, which kind of tells the rise and fall of an alien race and how they are kind of humanity's ancestors. So what we find on the source is kind of the source of all of that. We discover more of this ancestral life on planet Y that they have. We see right from the get-go the realized characters that we have on here. The planet that they live on is going through a dramatic change in topography. They would have to adapt in order to survive. Like, they're really cognizant of their own mortality as a species, and how are they going to go about saving themselves. And so with the help of the entire race, they're able to save as many as they can by kind of connecting themselves into almost a computer work or a computer framework by going deep below the waves, by creating this like city without walls, this liquid eternity, by connecting themselves into this strange matrix. And so this follows very well with how Ayreon likes to construct his storylines, dealing very heavily with the sci-fi aspect of what it means to be human and what it almost, at least with this one in particular, the struggles with mortality and overcoming that. And so I really enjoyed listening to how the characters work this out. I mean, we already know what happens with this race and what happens with Planet Y in 01, and I'm glad that, unlike a lot of other prequels, this one doesn't set out to retrace any of the steps or beats that have already been happening. It does take in, definitely a lot of the symbols and a lot of the themes from 01, such as reusing Liquid Eternity, using a lot of the different binary aspects, saying 0101 and all those types of things. But they never go right out until the very end of retracing any of the musical themes that we have. And in some ways, I like that. And in some ways, I kind of wish that they tied it in a little bit more. Like, I wish a theme would have started and then evolved into a theme that we heard from 01. Now, they did to a point in the end where, the end track is that gradual build to the very beginning, kind of like how Rogue One from Star Wars ended right on the same beat where A New Hope started off. And I wonder if that was a nod to how they had structured that, because they did kind of come out at the same time. So in terms of the story, I loved it, and I love the ebb and flow with this, the inner struggles that the species have with, do we connect ourselves, do we not, do we go how nature intended and die out, or do we rage against that and do our own thing? I love how the story is very rich in those metaphors and those symbols. And coming into that story, we have a plethora of fantastic vocalists coming and helming those characters. And this is the first time that Ayreon has dipped back into the past talent pool and brought about a lot of the characters that we've seen from before. And this kind of goes very well with like a concept album of a prequel, having some characters come from other albums and being in here. The star performer, of course, is James LeBray coming in as the historian, which kind of makes sense, being He's done a lot within the progressive rock, or at least the metal progressive. I like how he never oversteps himself as well. Like when I did my review with The Human Equation, I kind of had it in the back of my mind, oh, I wish this was a James LeBray from the past. But here, I think he's much more comfortable with the vocals that he has. And so he uses that to the maximum capacity without overstepping his bounds. And that was a very smart move on Arjun's behalf of restraining his voice to a very comfortable playing box so that the talent that he has just shines. And that is a fantastic feat.
Our world, our lives have been destroyed.
The list of characters is quite long, so I'm not going to touch upon everybody because everybody shines very, very brightly. But I do want to touch upon Tommy Rogers from Between the Buried and Me playing the chemist. His vocals on here are a perfect blend. With Between the Buried and Me, he is able to give about a lot of passion with his clean vocals, and we've seen that on a lot of his past works, but now we're seeing not only the clean vocals, but also we have many times where he's very brutal as well. But it's those clean vocals that I really gravitate to, and as the chemist, he feels that kind of alchemy coming through, the blending of chemicals and really creating that liquid eternity. So he was used beautifully on this album, and some of the emotions that we're able to get out of it is just fantastic.
Let go, the source will flow, awaken our senses and assume control.
And the last one that I really want to touch upon is Simone Simons from Epica playing the counselor. Her vocals of being more of an operatic? Being more of like an opera. And just being that soloist, she comes in and just dominates. Her presence on this album is felt, and when I'm listening to it, I'm moved and I'm struck, and I'm surprised that metal hasn't taken more of this operatic vocals to heart. So I'm glad that she came in and really, really shined. So let's talk about the music. I've hinted a little bit about the music before, but I really want to talk about it. The one thing that I want to say right out of the gates is I like how a number of these songs are just full on fun. I feel like this was something that was missing from a few of Ayreon's albums within the past, is this just fun atmosphere. Like each album had a fun song. Like on 01 it was Ride the Comet, The Theory of Everything, there was that movement in the last sequence. Even within The Human Equation there were a few songs that had this aspect of fun, but never like really embraced that concept of fun. And here we have a number of songs that really do that. So some of the examples of this is Everybody Dies, which is kind of ironic because a lot of those really fun atmosphere songs are those that are dealing with some really morbid and really heavy things. This is where Tommy comes in with some of the growls as well, and it's a really powerhouse song, and I think that's a lot of like the fun aspect on here. The other song is Run Apocalypse Run, another song that deals with a very heavy riff, a very heavy concept. Both of these songs kind of realize the inevitability of the mortality of this race. And so when we come to the other fun song that I really enjoy, Of Planet Y Is Alive, and this is coming in near the end of the album, this one is much more of a celebration of the accomplishment that everybody has done. It's that slide guitar that really ushers that song into it. That's just a lot of fun overall. And so overall, the music that's found on this is a lot more heavy than when we compare it to some of the past efforts. It's definitely in the same heaviness vein of 01, much more of a metal album in that sense. And I know Ayreon's last really big project was The Gentle Storm, and that one was much more of a gentle album, even within the Storm aspect on there. So it was almost a need to get back to that really heavy and really meaty atmosphere, shall we say, of the album. And that's felt with a lot of the meaty riffs and a lot of the meaty oomph on there. And talking about meaty riffs, let's also talk about some of the guest musicians on here. The one that I'll really highlight is Guthrie Govans, and I know him primarily from his work that he's done with Steven Wilson, especially with his latest project. Unfortunately, the album that I got didn't really outline which solos were which, but I have a feeling that Guthrie's solo is the one that's found on the 9th track of The Dream Dissolves. This is actually followed before a keyboard solo, and I have a feeling that one is the one that's constructed by Mark Kelly from Marillion. I believe it's Mark Kelly, don't quote me on that because I don't have the lyric sheets in front of me to tell who's who, but this is what I'm inferring. Much like Regret Number 9 with Steven Wilson, we have that beautiful keyboard solo that then goes right into the guitar solo. And what Guthrie is able to emote with that guitar solo just hits me. And it's so pure and so genuine that I can't help but melt. And so the song structures on here are very interesting. I like the fact that it's not as long as, say, The Human Equation, Into the Electric Castle, or 01. I like the fact that it's much more of a vinyl pressing length, much like The Theory of Everything. So what we have here is a little bit more of a digestible lump that we can get through. Even though, much like all of Ayreon's albums, it's still very dense, very complex. It takes a number of sittings to really get into it because, much like all of Ayreon's albums, on my first 1 or 2 listens, I was a little bit disappointed, but I like that. That means it's giving me something that I didn't expect. If right off the get-go, I'm like, okay, that was great, let's, that means that he's just kind of retreading the same ground that's always been here. And so when I come into something and I don't immediately connect it with it, that means it's going to take some process, and that's going to take some getting used to. And it challenges me, and I love to be challenged. So I like the fact that this album did challenge me in a number of ways and in a number of aspects. So after many listens, I'm getting used to it, and I'm really, really digging it. I wouldn't quite put it on the same caliber as 01 or The Human Equation because I feel like the essence of genius was touching those 2 albums, whereas on here, it's more of the essence of passion. So I feel the passion and I feel the enthusiasm of all the music here, and I am absorbed by it. I'm feeling the passion. I'm being absorbed. I can vividly picture the entire album as it's going through. In terms of really connecting with it, I'm still waiting for that aha moment, and it might just take a little bit of time for me to really get into that. But again, that just might be me needing to process it a little bit more, even though I've been with this album for just over a week. Because I wanted to really digest and really get into the music. So overall, I love this album, and it is an amazing addition to the already impressive discography that we have from Ayreon. I would definitely say if you can find it in physical format, definitely seek it out and get it, because this type of album begs to be listened to on a physical format. And so that's about it from The Source by Ayreon. What did you guys think? Once it comes out, let me know of your own thoughts by commenting down below. Are you guys excited for it? Get excited, because it is a fantastic release from Ayreon. It's going to take a couple of listens, and even after a couple of listens, I can still see a number of individuals not really gravitating to this album as readily as some of the past efforts. I think the star performers and the star caliber that we have on this will make Ayreon fans gravitate and flock and salivate for this album. It's one that won't disappoint those individuals, but those individuals that are coming in off the street from either a metal aspect or progressive rock aspect, they're going to find something that they really enjoy off of this album, but I don't think it'll be blow the doors down as impressive as some of his earlier works. It was an honor to get this album ahead of time so I can give you guys the review ahead of the release date. Because of that, I had to kind of quicken my Ayreon album lead-up reviews. I've reviewed each of Ayreon's previous albums. I've left the playlist in the end card for you guys to have a look at, so if you haven't already checked those out, definitely do so, at least to get excited and hyped for the album released at the end of this week. So that's enough from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.